Happy Monday and welcome to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking events. Another event tomorrow. Got Tamir Goodman, the Jewish Jordan, going to join. Check out winagainacademy.com. I am Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Nick Carparelli to the Wolff Den. Nick, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for having me be on with you.
Yeah, tell everyone who doesn't know who you are, give it a little introduction about yourself and also bowl season, and we'll get into it.
Sure. So I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great jobs in sports that I think unintentionally have all led to my qualification for this current role and why I enjoy it so much. I've worked on college campuses in football recruiting at both Syracuse and Notre Dame. I worked for Coach Belichick in New England and was part of one of those Super Bowl winning seasons. I was the senior associate commissioner for the Big East Conference for 12 years. I ran Big East football back when they had football, and we were a BCS conference. We had a lot of great teams back then. West Virginia, Louisville, Rutgers was on a high back then, and left there to run college sports marketing at Under Armour. I was signing large universities to apparel deals to help market and brand Under Armour and the university as a whole. And then this opportunity came up about a year and a half ago to run, at the time, was the Football Bowl Association. I was hired as its executive director. And the organization had been around for over 30 years. And for that entire time, it was really an internal trade association like any other, where a group of like-minded businesses would get together and, for professional development. We had an annual meeting, but we felt there was so much more to it than that. You think of all the great postseasons in college sports, the NFL playoffs with the Super Bowl. You think of the Major League Baseball playoffs and the World Series. You have March Madness. Bowl season is the same, has that same feel. It's a 3-week time a year in late December that's capped off by the college football playoff, and people turn their TVs on a Wednesday afternoon between Christmas and New Year's. I'm sure you do it, Matt, and you don't even know what bowl game is going to be on. You just know you're going to find one. There's probably going to be two teams that you heard about all year long, but you never had a chance to watch. So people watch them. The television viewership numbers of bowl games is really staggering on average. So, I've been handed the keys to one of the great traditions in American sports, and I love my job, and I'm really, really passionate about it.
You're a Syracuse grad, right?
I am. Yes, I got my MBA from Syracuse. I worked for the football team in the early to mid '90s when we were really, really good. Today's generation does not know Syracuse football to be good, but trust me, they were and they will be again.
Yeah, I mentioned that because when you were talking about the great Big East teams, you didn't mention Syracuse.
There was a period there when we reinvented the Big East where they were not as relevant as prior to that. But like I said, they'll be back.
Yeah, that's an experience too, watching football in the Carrier Dome.
Yes, it gets very loud. In fact, I'm dating myself, but in 1992, we were 9-1 and ranked 7th in the country, and Miami was 10-0. And number 1 in the country. And the game ended. We completed a pass. We were down 16-10 and driving, and there was a timeout, and that was the loudest sports venue I ever heard during that timeout. Anyways, the game ended on the 3-yard line. We completed a pass. He was tackled. No timeouts. Game ended 16-10. But that was a lot of fun. One of my earlier memories of my professional career, my working career, but one of the most memorable for sure.
Was that McNabb, or that was right before McNabb?
That was just before. We had just recruited Donovan McNabb. He might have even been at that game, and that probably sealed the deal. But that was Marvin Graves and Kadri Ismail, Shelby Hill, Chris Gedney, just great Marvin Harrison. Just they haven't had a roster of those types of names in a while.
No, but definitely every once in a while they pull an upset and they have a good story. So they're fun to watch. This is probably, we'll probably get to some of this stuff later, but my friend Brent wanted to know about basketball. He's more on the football side and not even sure it's something he can talk about. But
no, I see the question. Yeah, no, I was, there are 3 major apparel brands that outfit college athletic teams and basketball programs. It's Under Armour, Nike, and Adidas, and it's an interesting world. I know for sure that Under Armour was not involved in any of that kind of stuff because I was at the point of it. And we, what happened to those other brands caused a lot of work for us because we were, there was investigations, there was questions and attorneys. And so we downloaded everything we knew around that. But
and now you got Jordan Brand, the fourth. You got Jordan Brand in there.
Yeah, 3.5. They're really Nike.
They're really Nike. I'm told the kids love it. That's why they.
Nike's so big. They have to be two brands.
Well, it's really big. I say the kids love it. It's funny, recruits. It's a big deal for them. But I'm sitting here with a Jordan Brand logo on my Gator football shirt, and I'm like, what is going on here? It's weird. It's weird. Like, why not Nike? Why Jordan? If they're kind of related, but it's Jordan's basketball. Anyway, that's just that's a personal.
That seemed odd to me as well. Yes.
Yeah. So the Football Bowl Association, you did a whole rebrand, which we'll get into and talk about why and how and what that means moving forward. But the bowl season is not affiliated with the college football playoff or the Big Six. You guys are. Tell us which games are involved and how it kind of, obviously they're all together, but they're separate, right?
Well, no, Matt. Actually, bowl season encompasses every last bowl game, including the championship game. The CFP is kind of a subset of us. We service and represent all 44 bowl games. There's 42 traditional bowl games. There's the Celebration Bowl is a game between two historically black colleges and universities, and then you have the championship game. And when we have our annual meeting every year, all those games are represented equally. So we are the entirety of college football's postseason.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware of that, so that's good to know. Well, talk about the rebrand. It's obviously you come in, bowl season just sounds like a no-brainer as the name to be more identifiable. But what was behind that?
Yeah, so it was a fun process. As I said, nobody, fans don't know what the FBA was, right, or what it was supposed to do. We felt we needed to create a more an entity that the fans could identify with a little bit better, more like a March Madness, as I said. Believe it or not, we had a very thorough process to come up with the name. We had hundreds of names. A lot of them were kind of goofy and were dismissed right away. At the end of the day, and Matt, as a marketer, this, the value of a brand takes time, right? There's no substitute for time. You need time and repetition for people to recognize it and accept it. We think by naming it bowl season, we stole a lot of time value because people have been calling that informally for years. Yeah. So there's really not we're talking about the details of it, but at the surface, you really don't need a whole explanation on what bowl season is. If you're a college football fan, you know what it is. We did put a lot of work into the logo and obviously the execution, and you saw it on bowl game football fields, in their game programs, on their video boards. We relaunched our website and social media. And really, at the heart of our mission, Matt, is to use bowl season as a platform to tell all the great stories about bowl games and the student athletes who have participated in them, the people in the various communities across the country who host bowl games, all the time. Some of these people have dedicated their life to building the legacy of these bowl games in their communities. And they do such great work in their communities, refurbishing youth facilities, sports courts, fields, schools, the Extra Yard for Teachers program, supplies resources to teachers across the country to help their education, the education of the young men and women across the country. There's just so many good things that bowl games do that we need to do a better job of telling those stories, and bowl season now gives us the platform to do that.
Yeah, I think like I was going to say, everyone knows bowl season, and they might even have thought it was already called bowl season, but now they need to actually understand that bowl season is an organization and not just a term. So that's going to be the brand challenge in my eyes. So obviously you talked about TV ratings being great, but in person, I think there's some struggle, or has been in the past, and that's one of the things that you are going to focus on as well. How do you this year? I guess will probably be different because fans are going to want to get back. But there was some trouble last year with not having to have fans and previously. How do you attack that?
Well, obviously, 2020 was a unique year, and I don't think we can. It would be smart to strategize around solving 2020 issues long term, because knock on wood, those problems aren't going to exist anymore anytime soon. At least I hope. There'll be some lingering effect in 2021, but prior to that, there's an issue with live attendance at sporting events, at all sporting events, regular season, postseason, you name the sport. There's so many options for people to be entertained, and we're in the era now of people just looking at their phone and quick snippets of highlights, and to actually get to a game and sit there for the entire football 3 hours, it's not a problem that's unique to bowl games. So I think as sports evolves, bowl games will be right at the front line of finding out what keeps fans engaged, what's going to keep them coming to events. That live sports experience, for me, there's no substitute for that. You can go to a game live, or you could watch it any other way, phone, TV, whatever, and there's no comparison. So I think there'll always be an appetite for live audience, but it's going to be incumbent upon the people who run the bowl games and who run any sporting event, really, to find ways to engage fans in a unique way when they are in their venue, and compel them to want to attend games in person.
Yeah, and do you have an idea of what the split is for locals and teams traveling? Because there's just some teams that are, it's hard to travel that way just to go there. It's at the end of the year, holidays, December, who knows why. Is it, do you have an idea of the split between local people attending and travel?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. And the answer is, I could give this same answer for a lot of different bowl-specific questions, and the answer is that every bowl is different, right? Some have been around for almost 100 years, and there's going to be 3 new games this year, right? And everything in between. Some are in college football hotbeds, right, where fans will watch anything, and others are in pro towns. So they're all different. They all have a different purpose, and they all service college football in a different way. You take a game like the Sun Bowl in El Paso is a little bit of a poster child for me. The Sun Bowl is the biggest sporting event in El Paso, Texas, every year. They have teams that come to play there from the Pac-12 and the ACC that, if you're a native of El Paso and you don't travel much, you're never going to get a chance to see. So if Miami plays UCLA in the Sun Bowl, they sell out. The average Sun Bowl, 80% of the ticket sales is local fans. So you don't need the participating teams to support the game that much. Now you have other games, and it tends to be the newer games who haven't had years of history and tradition in that community. They're a little bit more reliant on fans to attend. So sometimes you might see a game that doesn't have the crowd that you might expect for a bowl game. But that's okay. Every bowl game is different. Every experience is different. In large part, these games are rewards for the student athletes and gives them an opportunity to visit a community that they may never have been able to before. And it's a great experience for them, being in a community for 4 or 5 days. And then the 3 hours on television for that community, it's like an infomercial for that part of the country. So, I know a lot of focus is placed on attendance at bowl games and the lack thereof for some of them, but there's so much more to it than that it's really not a make or break, depending on how many fans you have in the stands.
Yeah, Brent says pricing. Is that something you find that you're hearing, that it's maybe a little cost prohibitive with if you're taking a family to a game, especially if you have to travel?
For sure, and then there again, it's supply and demand, and it depends on where the bowl game is. You go to a game in Pasadena or Miami, it's going to cost a little bit more than if it's in, Frisco, Texas, or, Birmingham, Alabama. But if you're a fan of the team going to those games, you find a way to get there. So there are bowl games that are a little bit more inexpensive and affordable to go to. But then there's others that cost a little more. Now, most people don't choose the bowl game based on the bowl game. They choose it based on where their favorite team is going. So you don't always have a say in that. But I think bowl games try to do as best job as they can is to find a way to get as many fans to come as possible and have different price points for it.
Yeah, speaking of the teams going and who you're playing, is there any talk to maybe changing up the conference alignments? I know for me personally, as a Gator fan, I get not as excited when I know I'm going to play, Penn State and Michigan, and we've kind of played them a bunch of teams. I'd like to see a team we've never played before. I thought we were going to get to play Notre Dame this year in the bowls. It didn't work out that way, but I think we actually have a home and home with them now. So is there any talk about maybe switching that up?
Yeah, so the conferences do deals directly with bowl games to send teams, right? And it's very much a free market system. But you do see, each cycle, whether it's 4-year contracts, 6-year contracts, and they all tend to be coterminous based on the CFP arrangements. Everybody likes to be in line with that. You're going to see some new conference realignments. Probably one of the more interesting ones is the Las Vegas Bowl. They have that great new stadium out there that the Raiders play in. It was a Mountain West team against a lower level Pac-12 team. Well, that game has been elevated. It's going to be a top 4 Pac-12 team against either a Big Ten or an SEC team. Wow. So you're going to see that, and you see a lot of bowl games that kind of shift a little bit over time. You're seeing some pooling of games where you have, you might have a conference that has a relationship with 6 bowl games, knowing they'll only send 4 to those 6, right? But the math adds up. You promise X amount of teams from a certain amount of conferences for 6 slots, and the math works, and it gives conferences and teams the ability to rotate through some different games. So that's starting to happen a little bit more creatively, but I think everybody would love that, Matt. I think the old days where you could go to any bowl game feasibly at the start of the season, you don't know which one. I think it's a little more restricted now, but I think you're seeing that loosen up a little bit.
Yeah, I look forward to that because I'm always looking like, I don't want to see these guys play again, even just watching on television. So forget about going. And if it's close enough, I'm in South Florida. I got the Outback Bowl and the Citrus Bowl and the Orange Bowl. So, we kind of easy travel there. But it'd have to be a real compelling argument for me to travel for a game that, again, wasn't part of the playoff. And that's me. I'm probably different. I go to a lot of games. Florida being at that, level where sometimes you're just disappointed if your season ends up in one of these lower bowls. It's got to hurt. And speaking of that, there's a new trend of players opting out of the bowl game who are going to go to the NFL. And then also some teams have done it recently, which I imagine really hurts, an organization like bowl season and some of these bowls who are relying on, teams to be full, to be full and healthy as they're, putting out rosters and trying to sell tickets for these. And there's an element of unknown also.
Yeah, so those are really 2 separate things. In terms of team opt-outs, that was a 1-year COVID-related issue, right? I mean, you had teams that played 12 regular season games and others that played 4, right? You had conferences at the beginning of the year said they weren't going to play at all and then changed their mind, and you had other conferences start on Labor Day weekend, right? Similarly, you had some teams that said, this is just too much. We're calling it quits at the end of the year, so they didn't go to a bowl game. That will not continue. I promise you that. If it does, then we're going to revamp the whole system because that's not appropriate. But I have no fears that that'll be the case. It was a little over a year ago that, God forbid, you were a 6-6 team and you were the only one left out of a bowl game. It was like the end of the world. So I think that's the reality. When it comes to individual athletes opting out, that's not a new thing. I think it's a sign of the times. You're seeing athletes opt out the middle of the regular season, the middle of basketball season. There was a Duke basketball player that opted out. I'm not so sure that some athletes didn't use the pandemic as an excuse this year for certain things. You're never going to get away from that, but I don't know what the percentage is, but 95 to 99% of the players are going to opt in, and those are the ones we're worried about. If somebody makes an individual decision there, that's gonna be something they regret. when they get older. I have yet to meet a former college football player and says, you know what, I wish I didn't play in my last game. I've never heard that. But you're certainly going to hear guys saying, you know what, I wish I could lace him up one more time. What was I thinking not playing in a bowl game with my best friends in life? So I feel bad for guys who opt out. I really do.
Yeah. One of the things about bowl season, which maybe you guys are working on, is to kind of present it as less of I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Not so much like at the high end, it's a big achievement, and at the lower end, it's kind of just like celebrating the season. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and I almost feel like you teed me up, Matt. One of the things, bowl season's our name and we have our logo, but we're really billing it as a celebration of college football. Put it this way, Matt, if I told you, if the bowl system didn't exist, right, and college football wanted to find a way to promote their sport better, what if I told you that at the end of every season, every team with a winning record is going to play one more game. They're going to play a team that they don't typically get to play on a regular basis. They're going to play it in a destination that they don't typically get to go to from a personal level and a playing standpoint. You're going to have 42 communities across the country that get to see two teams play that they would never get to see normally. And we're going to call this a celebration of college football. And it's going to be the biggest and best promotional vehicle for college football that you could possibly think of. What would you say to that?
No, it's great. I think the problem is not the problem, but the perception is like these teams are, complaining about didn't get this bowl game. You're a 6-6 team and kind of being celebrated for being 6-6 as opposed to just celebrating football in general and wanting to give these kids a real experience. That's just kind of what you hear as the chatter every year.
And then part of bowl season's job is to change that narrative. And I think it's important to note that the people who are saying these things that you're referencing to are not the people participating in those games, are not the fans of those teams. The people that are involved in those games, whether it's a player or a university at large or the fans, there's no bad bowl experience. They're all great. And if you hear the stories, again, it doesn't matter. I mean, the Birmingham Bowl takes their student athletes to the Civil Rights Museum, right? And that the people that have gone in recent years, like the gratitude that the student athletes have shown for being given that experience and what they learned from it, you can't substitute that. So bowl games are more than just football games, and they're so meaningful to everybody involved.
Oh, we see the stories of visiting the hospitals and the kids and just camaraderie. It's just another time. I mean, it's business, right? You go there to win.
Yep.
You go there to learn and educate and have fun and have something different. It's probably like more exciting for some of these other teams that are, because at the top you do have the disappointment of not making the playoff or not making a New Year's Day bowl, and then you go be like, it's hard to. People are like, well, it's an excuse. Like, it was hard for them to get excited about playing this game, and maybe that's true, but I don't even know if that'll translate to being excited about being there. It just might be the game where it says, look, this is a great opportunity for us to go to Hawaii or us to go to, California. And some of these people, you're right, they don't get to travel to those type of destinations. And they're looked at as big men on campus, right? You come to a new location. I think it's great. But there's definitely, it's the perception that is going to need to be changed by some of the fans. But it's a good point that you made about it's the fans who are making these arguments and complaints and not the players. Because when it comes to players and the teams and all that, then you have a problem. If it's the fans, just keep making it better and bigger.
Yep. Hey, there's 42 bowl games now, most that there's ever been. It's a free market system. No one is telling communities they have to have a bowl game. No one is telling teams they have to go. There's contracts in place to make these happen. And if there wasn't an appetite for them, they wouldn't exist.
Is sponsorship the biggest reason why a bowl can exist or not exist?
Like I said, every bowl's different, so there's different ratios. But simply put, ticket sales, sponsorships, and television revenue are the three uh, revenue sources for bowl games. They might make a little bit of money on some other stuff, concessions, whatnot, but those are the big three. And every game's different. Like I said, the Sun Bowl sells a lot of tickets. Some games don't sell as much. Some games are great for TV, but maybe not for in-person travel. Some games are put together between two teams that are very local to the bowl game, right? But maybe don't have a great TV following. So they're all different in terms of the percentages, but those are the three revenue sources.
But bowl season doesn't have a sponsorship, a title sponsor itself. It's all of the games, correct?
Bowl season as an entity has many sponsorship opportunities. We do not yet have a sponsor associated with the bowl season name,
but we're looking.
Anything's possible.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. How long are these contracts on? Or that depends also, because you always remember hearing the Tostitos, Fiesta Bowl, and then it just these names keep changing. Is it just someone else wants it more? Is it sometimes it's time to move on?
Yeah, in terms of title sponsors, that's a big investment for these partners, and you don't see them last a long time. Tostitos was there for a long while. The Outback Bowl is amazing. I mean, Outback has been the title sponsor, I want to say, for 25 years now, and that's pretty amazing. That's unique. Every brand has new leadership, right, and new chief marketing officers from time to time, new presidents from time to time, and they all have their own vision. Having worked for Under Armour, I had 5 CMOs in 5 years, and they would each come in with these grand ideas that were contrary to the previous guy's ideas, not because they weren't good, just because they weren't his or hers. And by the time you get to your 5th one, there's not a lot of enthusiasm that it's going to stick. What you're doing, you're changing course just because you have a new guy in place. So that's something that translates to sponsorships for sure. So it's hard for a lot of reasons to hang on to the same sponsor for a long period of time.
I always laugh. I watch a lot of PTI, and Tony Kornheiser is always like, with all these new bowl games like the Weed Whacker Bowl and the Cherubundi. He's like, I've never even heard of half these things, but that's great. That's the great thing about it. Now you did, and we're getting the name out there, and people are like, what does this actually have to do with that? It doesn't need to make sense.
Well, the statistic. I mean, you mentioned some of those brands, right? Those types of brands, if you will, and I wouldn't even know how to categorize them. Emerging brands. You're not going to see a brand like that sponsoring the Rose Bowl or the Cotton Bowl, right? Simply because the price point would be too high, right? But for some bowl games, the price point is right, and it gets their name out there, and you have those guys talking about it. The statistics on the number of people that go to a brand's website and research who they are and what they do when they become a title sponsor of a bowl game is really pretty staggering and very, very worth marketing spend.
And a great opportunity for activations and experiential marketing at the events. And
yep.
That's definitely something we've talked about. Getting them something that's unique and just really getting the value of being the name of that, and having people call it that, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, it's the Rose Bowl" or "It's the Fiesta Bowl."
Right.
And, really calling it that and having it stick in your mind. We had a comment from Ryan about how much is involved in the bowl committee and behind the scenes. What is the process for bowl season with regards to bowl season in general when you have these committees for each of these bowls?
Yep. Well, one of the things we want to make sure we do with bowl season is to, as I said, use the new bowl season platform as a mechanism to pull all the games together under one system and to tell all of their stories. But at the same time, we do not, nor will we ever, take away the individuality of each bowl game. That's what makes college football's postseason unique. The experience that the Orange Bowl provides to the student athletes and what's unique about South Florida and Miami and all that stuff is very different than what the Cotton Bowl does. It's very different than what the Pinstripe Bowl does at Yankee Stadium in New York. It's very different than what the Liberty Bowl does in Memphis. Not one is better than the other. They're just different and they're unique. And if you're fortunate enough to be on a student athlete on a good football program, and you can go to 4 bowl games, in your 4 years or 5, you would want to go to a different one. You might say, I want to go to New York City, I want to go to Miami, I want to go to Memphis and have barbecue, might want to go to Dallas, I might want to go to, Pasadena, and if you can get to that level of bowl game in 5 years, your coach is probably leaving for a bigger job. But, my point being, every bowl game is unique and they all have something to offer.
Yeah, I mean, probably some kids who've never been to New York City before. When you talk about the Heisman, and these are kids who some just never been anywhere before they.
That's a fact. The first, I was a part of starting the Pinstripe Bowl, and the very first one, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, was Syracuse against Kansas State. And the Kansas State team was there. I mean, they bring, you bring your whole roster to bowl games. So if you have walk-ons, it's probably 100 kids, 100 student athletes. Only 5 had ever been to New York City in their life. They built it from Manhattan to Manhattan, is where the Kansas State traveled. And, they had guys ringing the bell at the Stock Exchange and going to the Empire State Building. And, New York City over Christmas time is pretty magical place. And that's just one example, but you can reference stories like that across every bowl game.
Yeah. And you're in a historic stadium. That's not a true stadium, right? It's a stadium, but it's not wrong sport, different sport.
Yeah. It's unique. A lot of people grow up wanting to play in Yankee Stadium. They don't specify the sport necessarily, but those kids get to play there.
So Ryan says Sugar Bowl, top game to attend. I've actually been to the Sugar Bowl. It was a great trip, a very terrible experience for the game because my team got their butt whipped, and they went in. It's one of those things where who knows? I don't know why they were heavily favored and they just got really embarrassed on television. But the Sugar Bowl. Do you have I guess you probably can't get a favorite, but before you were working, was there a memorable bowl game that you attended?
Yeah, good question. You're asking. It's like asking a dad who his favorite child is. But I do have a reason to like 2 in particular. The Fiesta Bowl was the first bowl game experience I had when I was a graduate assistant at Syracuse in 1992. Remember we talked about they used to play at that level. We went to the Fiesta Bowl. I was 24 years old as a graduate assistant. We played Colorado with Cordell Stewart, Eric Bieniemy, really good team, and we beat them. And so that made a big impression on me. And then the Pinstripe Bowl again, because I started that game with the Yankees. Growing up a Yankee fan, I know that whole organization now, and they treat me well. And that game has grown in 10 years to, for a, upper middle of the pack type of bowl game in terms of where the standings shake out. People really lobby to go to that game because it's such a unique experience. So I'm really proud of that one.
First of all, everyone has a favorite. They just don't like to say. There are 2 things that they can't tell anyone, publicly, or it changes daily, right? If you're talking about kids. But anyway, I understand that. I get that. These bowl games, like you said, the Vegas Bowl is just kind of elevated. What's the ability for a bowl game to elevate in the sort of the pecking order, aside from the teams that'll come there? I'm saying beforehand to make it a more desirable. Is it location? Is it sponsorship money? Or just? I
think you just hit it on the head. I think ultimately it's the teams that attend, right? It's the conferences they come from, and where in the standings a bowl gets to select. And those things are dictated by how much you pay the teams, where the game's located, the quality of the stadium, who the opponent is. Certain types of teams want to play certain types of teams, as you referenced. So, a lot of that work has to be up front. A lot of times it's the chicken or the egg, right? You're talking to 2 conferences at once, and who commits first, and the other one's not going to commit until they know who they're playing. With Las Vegas, they were playing in the old Sam Boyd Stadium that UNLV played in, and it was a little off course, and revenue potential was a little bit down there. And it was a newer bowl for years. Now they got the brand new Raiders Stadium. I visited it. There's a bridge, a road that goes from Mandalay Bay right over to the stadium. And on game day, they close that road, and it's just a fan thoroughfare. And just the ability for now the fans to go to Vegas, walk from their hotel with all their fellow fans of the team over to this beautiful venue. It's a unique game to have in any conference's lineup, right? You have some different types of destinations in your lineup. You don't want all your bowl games to look the same. So for the SEC and the Big Ten to hop on board and now be a part of the Las Vegas Bowl, I think it just all came together for that game.
Yeah, I've been to every time I would go to Vegas for work, I'd go to a Golden Knights game. It's a great experience to watch a sporting event in Vegas. So I'm looking forward to getting to the football stadium. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it'll be a bowl game. Who knows? Maybe it'll be before then. Maybe a Raiders game. Give us an idea of the calendar, the bowl season calendar. Like, what does that look like? When does the season start? What are kind of some big dates for you?
Well, I mean, the games themselves, they traditionally start exactly 2 weeks after the conference championship games. So those are on Saturdays. So 2 weeks after that is the first bowl game. It's usually around, the 19th or 20th of December, and they go right through to the college football playoff championship game, which is usually around January 8th.
But I mean bowl season in July. Like, we just had the draft. May 12th, We're going to have the NFL schedule. Like, what are big dates for you and bowl season in general for all the work that goes on before to even just make that stuff happen?
Yep. So we have our annual meeting typically in April. This year we postponed it to August, but that'll be a one-time thing. So we have our annual meeting in April where all 42 bowl games come. They bring their staffs. Conference offices bring representatives. We have a trade show where people who do business with all these bowl games come and network with those. So that's a big 3-day event every April. In May, we typically, I as the executive director, we visit with all the conference offices. We speak to the head football coaches groups, the athletic directors groups, brief them on what's going on with bowl season, and then also, ask them to encourage them to have dialogue with us about what they want the next evolution of the postseason to be. So that's where a lot of talk about the, changing the narrative and talking about how meaningful all bowl games are to different people. That's where that takes place. We're involved in conference media days in late July. We'll be in attendance there and available to talk to people. Throughout the football season, we attend certain games. We start rolling in August. We're going to start rolling out our podcast series where we talk to legends of bowl games and about their unique experiences. We're going to get in the bowl projection business. So mid-October, once the first few teams get their 6th win, we're going to start projecting where these teams will go. Every media outlet does that. They're wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
So we think we can be the authoritative source for those bowl projections.
And a little easier with the conference. Imagine if there was no conference alignment you had to try and figure out. It would be a
total guess. Yeah.
That's like the March Madness trying to figure out it's easy to say who's going to be in it, but finding out which region they're going to go to and who they're going to play. Yeah. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. So we're busy throughout the year, and obviously it all ramps up to Selection Sunday, which is the day after those conference championship games, and then the bowl games start 2 weeks later.
Let's talk about expansion. Would that affect you guys at all?
I don't think it will. The college football playoff is here. Whether it has 4 teams, 6 teams, 8 teams, I don't think it really matters. I think college football needs bowl games. There's 130 FBS institutions. If you told me now the playoff was going to double from 4 to 8, and I can't imagine it would go past that for a lot of logistical reasons. There's still 122 other institutions that play football, and we all know, you mentioned some of the elite programs that aspire to be in the playoff, and if they're not, they're disappointed. There's far fewer of those than there are other programs. I don't like to use names, but I'll use Syracuse, my alma mater, Syracuse, as an example. They're not sniffing the playoff anytime soon. So it would not be an appropriate postseason for a sport like college football to have 8 slots at the end of the season, and everybody else is told, you guys got to go home.
Could they be part of the playoff as a bowl game? Is that?
Well, they are now, and I don't foresee that changing.
Yeah. Well, right now they're the bigger ones, like the New Year's Six, right? But could that expand?
Yeah, I think any game is as big as the opponents and the level it's played, right? I think the games that host the semifinals now are the traditional bowl games that have been around the longest, and they've been deemed as the semifinal games. But I think the next evolution of college football's postseason will include a lot more thought into not just what the playoff component is, but what the rest of the bowl season looks like and how it all functions together.
Yeah, because I like the idea of having one game at a bowl location instead of them having two. So I think it'd be better to just give it to someone else and keep rotating it rather than being like, okay, we have an Orange Bowl here and then we have a playoff game or a championship. It
Right.
seems a little weird to me. I don't know, that could just be me.
Yeah. Well, I think all those types of options are going to be analyzed this next time around. There's 5 more years of the current format, so I imagine those conversations will be ramping up in 2 years. Maybe a decision made on the future with, a couple of years left on the current deal, and then we roll into whatever's next.
So it can't even expand from 4 for the next 5 years.
I don't see any way it can. I mean, you can do anything you want. I mean, you could tear up contracts in the middle of them. It's done all the time. But the current arrangement, college football's postseason is very complicated, right? So you have 10 conferences involved. You have 6 bowls, as you mentioned, that are part of that rotation. You have ESPN that has the rights for this currently. And then there's an impact on all the other bowls after that because they're selecting a certain slot, right? And they have contracts with these conferences for that slot. So now if they can't be delivered, those have to be broken. It's not as easy as it seems. And I don't think there's a compelling reason to expand the playoff immediately for people to be willing to do that.
I'm a big proponent of an 8-team playoff. I think, give the 5. If it was me, if I'm running things, I give the 5, the Power 5, and then 2 wild cards, and one to the highest rank, non-Power 5, and then a couple wild cards. Something of that. I just think I think it's easier that way. Team loses their conference and wins the national championship. It's not basketball, so it kind of sits. It doesn't sit well. And then 6, I can't imagine you're going to try and figure out which 2 teams get to play one less game to win it all. That seems crazy to me. But
I think that's the exact debate that they'll have.
Yeah.
And I think any expansion, in my mind, will be driven primarily due to access, but not due to necessity for finding the best teams. To be honest with you, I can make a better case that there's not 4 qualified teams to win the national championship every year than there's more than 4. You see a lot of blowouts in those semifinal games.
Yeah, I just think you can't. It's hard to just leave it at 2. I don't think you need to expand it so much, but like you said, 4 teams, 8 teams out of 130. That's still by far the smallest percentage of teams that have a shot at it, and it opens it up a little bit more for stuff like just there's such craziness that goes on in college football. One play, I mean, the Gators, for example, were 3 plays away. They could have been undefeated. 3 plays in the whole season, 1 in 3 games, and any one of that could have changed everything. And then you have to argue: are they better than one of the teams that made it? Let's try and figure it out on the field. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'd like to see it expand more, and I think you got to do it. The expansion's got to do it with nothing in mind other than the infrastructure of it, to say, well, my team didn't get in here, or this team got in and they didn't belong, so we need to do this. I understand there's politics in college football that are probably never change, but that's my hope for it.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head on the reasons why you would expand it. But back to my answer, like I honestly am one who is I'll be a fan in terms of observing whether the playoff expands or not. What it does to bowl season, I'm not concerned in the least, because college football needs bowl games.
Yeah, and I think it probably only help. I mean, like I said, maybe they'll involve some of these bowl games that weren't a part of the playoff is part of the rotation, which can only be helpful. What's the biggest challenge for you to get the perception changed about bowl season? Or
yeah,
you're in a pretty good spot right now, right? I mean, you guys are in a pretty good place right now.
We are, it's. I mean, everybody has challenges, right? So mine are, to be honest with you, I think mine are a lot less than most people's. People love bowl games; they watch them. Even the people who complain about them, they still watch them. You know, just to give them something to complain about. That's the nature of human beings these days. Um, our biggest challenge is finding the best and creative ways to tell all the stories. I mean, the bowl games are about stories. Like I've already started chatting. Don McPherson, who was a runner-up to the Heisman Trophy back in '87 to Tim Brown, Teddy Bruschi, who played in 3 bowl games at Arizona, or 2 I just talked to last week. But I'm talking to a whole bunch, and I'm preparing for these podcasts we're going to have. And their eyes light up with all they've accomplished in life. Their eyes light up when they talk about these bowl games, the fun things they had. Maybe it was a play on the field. Maybe it was the steak eating contest they had with the other team. Maybe it was their day at the beach and who won the cannonball this. Maybe it was going to the Civil Rights Museum. They all have something different, but they did it with their best friends in life. The guys they've been with for 4 or 5 years, friends to this day. It goes back to their youth, to their before there were such pressures in life. And there's so many great stories, and the more bowl games we have and the more experiences that these athletes can have, the better it is for them and for the sport of football. So we need to do a better job of telling those stories and to get people to understand, look, if you don't like a certain bowl game for whatever reason, then don't watch it, but to say that it's not meaningful when the people going to the game are just would give up anything to do it again is almost irresponsible, to be honest with you. I don't know if you watched the Cure Bowl this year, Liberty against Coastal Carolina. That was one of the best football games I've seen.
Who was undefeated, right? Who was undefeated?
Yeah, Coastal Carolina was undefeated, and then Liberty had lost 1 game. They were supposed to play each other in the regular season. It got canceled because of COVID. So they played in the bowl game, went to overtime. Watch that game and tell me that game was meaningless.
Well, if you look at the college football playoff, it's essentially meaningless to everyone but 4 teams.
Right.
That way.
Right. So everything is meaningful to somebody, and the people that participate in these bowl games, if it's your bowl game, it is the most meaningful thing that is happening in the world.
But at the end of the day, it's an economics thing, right? These bowl games have to have money enough to survive. You've lost some bowl games. You've added some bowl games. Is part of it just kind of maybe this location isn't going to work? And part of it was we need, different brands?
It could be a host of things but the bottom line is, and it's kind of part of the argument back to these people. If the bowl game doesn't work, it'll just naturally stop existing. If people don't want to go, the teams don't want to play in it, the community doesn't want to host it anymore, then it'll move on and it'll go to a different destination. It's the free market system. So
who makes those decisions from a location, like a community level?
It's a joint effort amongst the bowl organization and the participating teams. Typically it's the organizing committee and whoever is putting the game together that puts a lot of the pieces in place that we talked about earlier, and then approaches 2 conferences and say, hey, would you like to come and play?
But from a location perspective, do you have a lot of interaction with like the visitors bureaus? Yes.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Those are visitors bureau, sports commissions. Those are typically some of the larger sponsors for these bowl games. You think about it. If you go back to the history of bowl games when they were first started, the whole purpose of them was to stimulate tourism in a community at a time of year when people aren't traveling. People don't travel around the holidays. So when you think of some of these bowl games, maybe it's Boca Raton, maybe it's Myrtle Beach, maybe it's Birmingham, wherever it is. If each team only brings 10,000 fans and there's 20,000 in the stands, you turn on the TV and say this is a failure. For those communities to have 20,000 people flooding their city in December, that's a home run. So it's all about perspective when it comes to those things.
What do you say to the FAU guy who's got to play his bowl game at home? That's got to be disappointing in the spirit of the whole bowl season and wanting to go. I guess it doesn't happen that often, but some of these smaller.
Yeah, it's part of the business. I think to have a home team obviously helps with the ticket sales, right? So you're not going to have that team there every year. But, the bowl experience still is unique. You're still playing a team that you wouldn't normally face. There's some comforts to being home. I guarantee you they do team activities that week that they don't normally do during the year. and they get their bowl gifts. It's still a great experience. Like I said, if you're fortunate enough to be at a university that plays in 4 or 5 bowl games in your career, you can do that once, and then you can go experience the other 3 or 4 years.
What's the best college football rivalry?
Syracuse has had so many rivalries disrupted because of conference realignment that they don't have one I would point to. So I would have to look at the rest of the college football landscape, and I don't have an extraordinary passion for any of one of them. You would probably say Florida, Georgia, just because you're, a Florida fan,
It has to do with winning too. I mean, everyone says Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan hasn't sniffed a victory there in God knows how long.
Yeah. So I'm going to go a little off the grid here just because I grew up in Connecticut, and it's such a unique rivalry in terms of its age and the level it's played. But the Yale-Harvard game that I've even been to in recent years, and I think what stands out about that is those teams will play 9 regular season games each year before that game in front of anywhere from 5 to 10,000 fans, and 50,000 fans go to that game.
Yeah. Get to that game. Army, Navy. I mean, these are all.
Army, Navy's a great one too. Yeah, I've been to that one. Yeah, I think those two, because they have multiple meanings to them and just elevate the level of those games beyond what they would normally be. I think those probably stand out for me.
Is there a game that's most memorable for you? I mean, for me, I've been to I saw the Gators beat Oklahoma to win a national championship, but the cock block in the swamp when they beat South Carolina and Jarvis Moss blocked 2 kicks in order to keep their season going is probably the most memorable game for me. Do you have one that's maybe the best game you ever seen, most memorable for that reason?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit unique too, and obviously it's not the best game period, but I haven't been to every game ever played, right? The best one I've been to was in 2006. It was Louisville at Rutgers. And I was at the Big East at the time. We were kind of reinventing ourselves, and we put a schedule together where West Virginia traveled to Louisville on a Thursday night in November. And fast forward to November, they're both undefeated, ranked 3rd and 5th in the country. Louisville wins the game, and we had scheduled the following Thursday, 7 days later, Louisville to go to Rutgers. And Rutgers was 8-0. They were ranked, 15th, highest they've been ranked ever, maybe. And Louisville goes there. Now they're the number 3 team in the country. And Rutgers wins on a famous kick by Jeremy Ito, and he points at the field camera. That was when that was new, that hovering camera over the field. And that was unique just because I've been to so many Rutgers games where there was crickets, and a new kickoff. And it had, because it was new to those people, because it proved to the university that, hey, this can happen here, the electricity in that stadium. And, New York sports fans are sophisticated, so it wasn't like they were novice sports fans. It was just new to Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers is a different animal. I grew up in New Jersey, so it was
the most memorable to me, the one I was at. Yeah.
And they were so close to kind of like breaking through. I think the thing that I remember is they had a chance, I think, to maybe make the playoffs, or not playoffs, the BCS, or I don't know. They missed a kick against maybe Pittsburgh, and they were undefeated, and then it was like all down.
Last game of the year, West Virginia.
West Virginia, that was it.
Another great game, triple overtime. Winner went to the BCS. Yep.
Yeah, that was. I remember that because I was outside of a restaurant, like watching in the window. And just remember how heartbreaking it was for them to lose that game.
I mean, it's I think they felt they arrived, and then when Greg Schiano was tempted to leave and he left, they were kind of, well, we'll hire another coach. He is so good and so perfect for that program, and he's relentless. That's the type of program that's going to need a head coach that is consistently relentless. You can never sit back because they'll never be elite.
Now they're in the Big Ten, so.
But he's got them back going already. They won 4 games last year. It's as many as they won the previous 3 years combined. So he's got it going.
We'll root for him. I got a soft spot in my heart for Rutgers. Who's your college football Mount Rushmore? The 4 best college football players.
Players of all time.
Yeah, or that you've seen.
That's that's tough. I never really thought of. There's so many great ones. Yeah.
Who are your favorite? Do you have any favorites that you love to watch?
Well, when you think of some of the most exciting, I mean, some of the most exciting college football players ever. Reggie Bush was so exciting and fun to watch. Um,
He
you
was
think,
one of my favorites.
Lamar Jackson recently was fun to watch. Although I don't know if I would put him on the Mount Rushmore per se. Rocket Ismail. If you go back, I'm dating myself now. Like you felt like when he fielded a punt or a kickoff, you expected him to run it back every time.
Yeah.
Tim Tebow. I mean, he's just personifies college football and didn't have much of a football career past that. So you really kind of pigeonholed him there, and maybe that elevates his status at the college level.
Yeah, as great as he did, he could have won another national championship. Just lost that game to Bama. Could have won another Heisman. It's just crazy to think how successful he could have been. I got guys like Barry Sanders and Marshall Faulk. Those are some of the, seems to be the running backs that get me. We used to have that days when Klingler and all them were throwing, 7 touchdowns a game, and it's just it got a little crazy. Andre Ware. It's hard. It's tough to narrow it down. Very tough to narrow it down. What would you be doing if you weren't involved in football? You've been in football and college for so long. What do you think? Did you grow up wanting to do something specifically?
That's a good question. I don't know what I'd be doing. My undergraduate degree was at a small school called Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. So I have a mechanical engineering degree. And I worked at Pratt & Whitney designing aircraft engines for a year out of college. And clearly that was not what I wanted to do, nor is that what I think I would be doing if I wasn't doing this. It'd be hard to say. I'll tell you one thing. I think a lot of people who are involved in sports, whether it's players or administrators, can't imagine doing anything else. Quick story for you. When I was working for the Patriots, late night, did some work, and then I went down into the weight room on the treadmill. It was just me and Tom Brady there on the treadmill, and we were chit-chatting. I don't even know about what, but I remember the one thing I asked him. I said, "Hey, Tom, do you ever think about what you'd be doing if you weren't playing football?" And this was his first year playing, right? This was middle of the year when he took over for Drew Bledsoe. I hadn't won a Super Bowl yet. He's thinking, he goes, "You know what? Never really thought about it." And here he was, like, 7th round draft pick, no shoe in, and hadn't even thought about it. And he's probably one of the more, forward thinking, well adjusted, somebody you think would have his life plan put together, kind of a guy. But nope, just that's all he wanted to do.
He knew it's what he wanted to do. He knew he was going to get there. We'll get you out here on 2 quick questions. We're a memorabilia company. What's your favorite piece of memorabilia? I see you got some great stuff back there. Do you have anything that's real meaningful to you?
Yeah, I have a lot. I'm not a collector per se, even though I have a lot, because I've worked in sports and had so many great jobs. I have everything I have is personal to me. Like, somebody some people I know or things I've done. If there's one item that stands out, gosh, I can't even tell you. I mean, I have a chair from the old Yankee Stadium. I have a piece of the Carrier Dome roof that Jim Boeheim signed. I have, pictures aren't necessarily memorabilia, but pictures of me and my kids on the field at Yankee Stadium, and
those are all great memories.
Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, so much great stuff.
So we'll get you out of here. Same question we ask everyone. You got 24 hours to spend with one person. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. Who are you choosing, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I'm going to have to break the rule and say 2 people. It's my 2 sons, and we're going to go to Sally's Pizza in New Haven, Connecticut. We're going to stuff ourselves. We're going to get in the car, drive to Yankee Stadium, be on the field for batting practice, and sit and watch the game. That's what we're doing.
How about someone non-related? Anyone?
Non-related?
You've never met that you'd think would be really cool to hang out with?
I'm gonna break the rule. I'm gonna say that he's dead. It would be Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra.
I want to watch his show, and then I want to spend the night doing whatever Frank would do after his show.
That'd be a hell of a night. Who's the greatest Syracuse athlete of all time? I forgot that.
Jim Brown, easy. Yeah, he might be the greatest athlete, period, of all time. Yeah.
Check out bowlseason.com. They're on Twitter and Instagram, Bowl Season, doing some great things with the Bowls. Really excited to see what happens this year. Nick Carparelli, really appreciate you coming on the show today, and look forward to getting more involved with Bowl Season.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Great visiting with you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.